Okay, I think we're about good to go. Welcome everybody to our Healthy Minds, Thriving Workplaces webinar series. Some of you may have been attended previously to some of our events, and if you haven't had a chance to catch any of our previous webinars from the series, don't worry, we got you covered. We will be sharing with you after the session a link where you can access the previous sessions too if you're interested in exploring things like psychosocial hazards and also understanding more about how do we create supportive work cultures. My name is Miriam Henke. I am a psychologist, and today my colleague and I, Simone, will be exploring how to implement mental health initiatives in the workplace. We will make sure that we provide you with a copy of the recording of the webinar afterwards. Unfortunately, we won't be providing our slideshow, but do feel welcome if you would like to take a screenshot of any really good slides that you like. Today, I will be the host of the session and Simone will be our main presenter. Over the course of this next 45 minutes, we're going to be having a look at all things to do with mental health initiatives. So what are they and what kind of initiatives support mental health in the workplace? Why are they such a good investment to organisations? It's a good question to answer, so we'll go there. Then we're going to have a look at meeting business needs. So what's going on in your organisation, how to pick up on those needs, and then tailor your programs in order to meet those particular needs and challenges. And then from there, we're going to move into some guidelines, some practical guidelines on how you can develop these initiatives and evaluate their effectiveness before finally we have plenty of time for Q&A at the end. Now, Simone and I want to acknowledge that we have a range of different people in the webinar today with us live, and there'll be people also joining us on the recording. No matter where you're at in your journey as a leader or working in the wellness space, there'll be something here for everybody. So do make sure that you've got a pen and paper just so you can make some good notes as we go. And if you do have any questions, we will answer them at the end of the session in the Q&A. So I'm going to throw over to Simone so that she can introduce herself.
Thank you, Miriam. And so welcome back to anyone who's been on a previous webinar with us, and hello to the new faces. So my name's Dr. Simone Shaw. I'm a clinical psychologist and clinical neuropsychologist, and I've been working for almost 2 decades, and I've been a registered psychologist for 20 years. Early on in my career, I worked as a rehabilitation coordinator, and that was predominantly for long-tail psychiatric claims or for dual diagnoses. I have gained experience specifically in occupational health and safety, workers' compensation and rehabilitation, industrial relations and common law. That really came through conducting workers' compensation claim investigations for psychiatric injuries and also conducting independent medical examinations for both psychological or neurological conditions. So currently I'm focusing on executive coaching, providing strategic advice, continuing to do IMEs, but I'm absolutely passionate about training. I've spent a lot of time working in the reactive space, and it's so rewarding to work in the preventative space to help individuals and organisations to manage their own well-being and then to have flourishing teams. So I'll throw back over to Miriam to introduce herself and Leading Wellness Solutions.
Beautiful. Thanks so much, Simone. My name is Miriam Henke. I have been working in the supportive space of helping people and their organisations to feel and function better as an executive coach, and for over 10 years as a health psychologist, primarily in the private sector. I have a lot of experience in treating, assessing, diagnosing clients with a range of presentations, psychological conditions, including those who are under workers' compensation schemes. As a health psychologist, I have a deeper and broader knowledge of physical health conditions as well, and the interaction between our physical and mental health. I provide a lot of training and facilitation as well, particularly in the corporate space around mental health and wellbeing in the workforce, and also in leadership development, particularly around creating more effective, authentic leadership approaches. My area of special interest is in mind-body medicine, and from that special area of interest in work, I have been able to create something called the Mainspring Method. And I've also founded Quantum Retreats, which provides special experiences for people to learn more and experience the power of mind-body medicine. In my entrepreneurial world, I have co-founded something called Lifespan Dynamics, a company which specializes in the education and distribution of photobiomodulation devices. Don't worry, there's no test. You don't have to remember that. Photobiomodulation is the technical term for red light therapy, which some of you may have heard of. And if not, worth exploring. It can do some amazing things for mind and body. I've done a lot of lecturing as well. There's the University of Adelaide, and I have a very good relationship where I'm senior clinical lecturer, and previously I was the psychology lecturer for the Australian Chiropractic College. So with this combined force of both Simone's amazing experience and knowledge and mine, we have come together to create leading wellness solutions, really wanting to be able to leverage a lot of this amazing knowledge and experience we've gained to be able to help people in workplaces, to be able to support leadership, especially in being able to implement transformative change. So we like to work and partner with leaders and teams to be able to create sustainable wellness solutions. And we have a range of programs that we can offer in that space to improve mental health literacy, resilience, communication skills, and personal leadership. So please do get in touch if there's anything that we can do to help. We will give you some links after where you can get in touch. So I'm going to throw back to Simone for the session now to tell us more about mental health initiatives. Thanks, Simone.
Thank you, Miriam. So to start with, we're just going to talk about what are mental health initiatives and why they are an important investment for organisations. So just bear with me as we move on. So in terms of what are mental health initiatives, so from a broad definition perspective, they encompass programs and policies that are implemented by an organisation to promote and support the mental health and wellbeing of its employees. What we're interested to know is what mental health initiatives have you or your organisation already implemented? So if you just want to pop some ideas into the chat box there in terms of what you are already doing in this space. As you're doing that, we know that there are now psychosocial codes of practice in relation to managing psychosocial hazards within the workplace. So now this is at the forefront of a lot of organisations' minds. So usually most organisations have heard of EAP, and most of them have that in train. So not sure, Miriam, if we've got anything in the chat there.
Yeah, but please don't be shy. Oh, awesome, Joanna. Thank you. EAP, she was onto it. That is definitely a fantastic initiative. Thanks, Joanna. Any
And
other?
Any other thoughts in terms of other mental health initiatives that your organisation currently have in train? We know that different organisations have different maturity levels in this space. So some organisations are doing a lot, and yes, others, maybe this might be something new that you're looking at. So thank you, Mark. Wellness days. So we'll chat a little bit later about wellness days, Wellness Wednesdays, indeed. Yes, so EAP, thank you, Sudha, and also promoting those mental health awareness days like Are You OK? Brilliant, fantastic. So you're on the money in terms of different types of mental health initiatives. So let's just go through some things to consider. Another one first. Thanks, Denise. So EAP plus also health memberships to gyms. Love that. Such a great idea to incorporate those for your staff so they can access that. Wonderful. Thank you for your contributions, team. So let's move now into, I guess, the importance of organisational investment in relation to implementing mental health initiatives. So I'm sure you're all very familiar with these statistics, but just to remind you, according to the Australian Productivity Commission in 2020, mental illness cost Australian businesses $16.6 billion, yes, billion, not million, dollars from absenteeism and presenteeism alone. We know that nearly 1 in 5 Australians report high levels of psychological distress in the workplace, therefore putting impetus in relation to organisations trying to manage wellbeing within the workplace so that they're more productive. We know that the median cost of psychological stress claims in 2019-2020 was about $46,500, which is 3 times the median cost of compensation for all serious claims, which is only sitting at around 14.5. And the research shows us that 12 million days of reduced productivity are due to mental illness in Australia. And in the workers' compensation space, stress-related disorders are costing organisations $200 million per year. So as I said, you're probably familiar with those statistics, and it just creates that impetus of the importance of creating mental healthy workplaces and investing in this so that you can reduce some of these costs and the impact on the organisation. So, what are the benefits of engaging mental health initiatives and implementing them within your workplace? Well, we know from an employee perspective that this can in turn reduce the individual employee's stress levels, their anxiety levels. It helps to improve their own personal resilience in relation to stress management strategies and overall improving their work-life balance. So, on the back of that, then employees are more productive. So, from an organisational perspective, if an employee is feeling great about coming to work, then they have increased productivity, which will in turn reduce your absenteeism and reduce staff turnover. We looked at some research and we found that 81% of Australian employees prefer workplaces that do support mental health initiatives, which then attracts and retains talent. So, if your organisation, for example, has gym memberships or EAP offerings, wellness days, whatever else that might look like, then you'll be an employer of choice. So that will make your organisation attractive on the open market. Employees will want to come and work for your organisation. Then they'll be invested in these wellbeing initiatives and then in turn want to stay. And as you can see, there's a cyclic effect there. From the board and ELT level, they're always wanting to crunch the numbers and look at that return on investment. So the research shows us that organisations that do invest in wellbeing programs see a return on investment of up to 6 to 1 due to lower cost and reduced absenteeism. And then by investing in these initiatives, both the employee and the organisation benefit from this positive workplace culture. So it's a win-win for everybody. All of the employees and the organisation in turn reaps the benefits as well. So, what are some of the different types of mental health initiatives? You're probably familiar with most of these. So, we're giving you the broad brush approach. We've got lots of different organisation industries that we need to meet different needs of. So, to begin with, we can have our mental health awareness and education. So, mentioned earlier was Are You OK Day, and there's also World Mental Health Day and a plethora of other awareness days throughout the calendar. And organisations that promote and invest on these days as an ongoing dialogue versus just doing it as a one-off is a way of showing to staff that you take these things seriously and it's important to have that diversity and to support these initiatives. So with our mental health and awareness and education, it's promoting and providing that understanding of these initiatives, but also then providing resources for staff members to increase their own self-management and to take responsibility for their own mental health and well-being. So by doing that, that then helps to reduce stigma within the workplace regarding conversations of mental health issues. Historically, we know that there was a lot of stigma attached to mental health, and I think we've come a long way, but I still do think we have a long way to go as well in relation to reducing that stigma. So it's an ongoing piece of work. We spoke earlier about EAP, and most organisations are implementing EAP, which is wonderful. So, as you know, providing confidential and free counselling services to staff and their immediate family. And usually that can be accessed in a variety of ways, whether it's face-to-face, by telephone, or by video conferencing facilities. And we know that some organisations, the uptake is quite low. And so we would encourage organisations to be using it as much as possible for any matter related or personal. So it's a service that's being paid for, so to utilise that, and also encouraging to do this as well, to walk the walk and talk the talk in this space, and be an exemplar of utilising that service and the benefits that it can bring. Another example. Sorry, Miriam, I'm just having trouble with there we go. We've got all 5 of them now, not a problem. Whoopsie, we might just go back. Thank you, Miriam. So work-life balance. So implementing policies and that promote work-life balance. So this is where we're looking at flexible working arrangements and all the different types of leaves that are available to staff. So it's not only having the policies, but it's also promoting them and enacting them. There's no point having a policy if it's not being utilised. Uh, Providing a healthy work environment. So this is twofold. So this is creating a supportive work culture, so creating that psychological safety, but also ensuring that the work environment is also physically safe, but also physically inviting. So where possible, having natural light, whether it be having plants within the working environment and things like that. So having a physically and psychologically safe work environment is important. We also know it's very important to manage our stress levels. In our next webinar, we'll be unpacking this in detail. So what can this look like? This could involve offering wellness programs or well-being programs that are evidence-based to your employees and leaders to reduce and manage stress. So it could be as simple as having mindfulness or yoga sessions, within the work environment, maybe before work or at lunchtime, so that staff can access those. Or it could be providing training to staff in relation to building their own personal resilience. So there's a few options there in terms of stress management. The final component, so this slide is not being very friendly, is looking at crisis interventions. I'm so sorry, team. So in that crisis space, it's ensuring that there's established protocols and also training staff before a crisis occurs. So having a plan in place that if someone is experiencing a mental health crisis, which could be a psychosis, it could be someone's extremely agitated, and what the organisation would do and they would respond in that space when the crisis were to occur. So very important to plan for that before the event occurs. So that's just a broad overview of different types of mental health initiatives. We know that some organisations are mature in this space and others are just starting. So what we wanted to share with you next was the 5 ways to wellbeing, which came from 400 experts got together over in the UK. They looked at all of the research data and they wanted to know what are some key ingredients in relation to creating mentally healthy workplaces. What can individuals within an organisation do to look after their own mental health and well-being? So we're going to chat this through with you. And if you are just starting your journey or thinking of some creative and no-cost ways to improve mental health initiatives within your workplace and to implement that, this is a great starting point for you. So the research shows us that it's important for us to be connected. We're social beings and we want to be around other human beings. So some ideas of bringing this to the workplace as an initiative is to have shared eating areas so that staff can come together and share meals together. The Australian culture isn't always the best role model in this space. And I think some of the European countries and South American countries are really great, where people come together in communion around food and celebrate food. Other ways that we can get staff members to connect within the workplace, thinking particularly about those remote workforces, is just ensuring that you're continually connecting in with them and making sure that they feel a part of a bigger team. The next way to well-being is looking at our physical health and well-being. So we've known for eons that being physically active is important for our physical health, cardiovascular fitness, etc. But the research shows us that it's also essential for our mental health and well-being. So when we engage in physical activity, it releases endorphins. We also get a hit of dopamine and serotonin, all of those great neurotransmitters that make us feel fantastic. When we engage in physical activity, it helps to improve our sleep, our mood, our libido, and so there are many creative ways that we can bring physical activity into the workplace. Earlier, we had the initiative of having gym memberships, etc. But why not consider walking meetings? So if you need to connect with a staff member, rather than sitting down face to face in an office, if the weather's fine, going for a walk outside, getting some vitamin D, getting some fresh air, getting into green spaces, also moving your body, but being productive at the same time. So that's just a really quick way and an easy idea of bringing that to the workplace. Another idea might be to walk over and talk to a colleague if they're sitting on the same in the same area that you are, rather than sending an email. Getting your steps up, connecting, and also getting your steps in at the same time. The third way to well-being is the concept of mindfulness, which you've probably it's come to the light recently, and is something that a lot of workplaces are looking at. So when we are mindful, we are focused on a particular task and not thinking about all of those other distracting things. So we would encourage people to engage in mindfulness on a regular basis. So whether it's first thing when you wake up in the morning, or whether it's on your drive to work, or during your lunch break, or when you're finishing work for the end of the day. So making a regular time. And there are some beautiful evidence-based apps out there that are fantastic in this space. They have meditations and mindfulness activities that are very short duration, 3-5 minutes, or can be extended as well. So we would recommend Smiling Minds, Calm, Breathe, or the Virtual Hope Box, and there's lots of others as well. So that's a way that an organisation can incorporate mindfulness into the workplace. It can even be done in group settings, and particularly Smiling Minds has particular meditations and mindfulness for the work environment, so the team can sit together and engage in these activities too. The fourth way to well-being is in relation to keeping our brain active. If we don't use it, we lose it. Our brain loves new, novel, and interesting and exciting things, and it's so important to continue to foster that, to keep our brain young and active and alive. So in relation to bringing this to the workplace, thinking about employees stepping up, whether they take on a new responsibility, act in a higher role, whether they look at secondment opportunities, just to try something new. We know through challenge it can create difficulty, but through challenge we also grow. So very important to continue to fuel that thirst for learning and to keep our brain active and alive in that space. The final way to well-being is giving without expecting anything in return, those random acts of kindness. The research shows that when we do this, we feel good about ourselves. So within the work environment, if someone's created a wonderful spreadsheet, a wonderful resource in some regard that would be of benefit to others within the organisation, just sharing that. No need to reinvent the wheel, share the love, and then others will be so very grateful for that opportunity. And then the organisation and the team can be more productive. So hopefully with those 5 ways to wellbeing, there might be some things there that you'd like to consider at no cost for your organisation if budget is an issue. So what we're going to do now is we're going to chat through thinking about meeting your specific business needs. What will be some things that you would want to tailor to ensure that you're meeting the unique needs and challenges of your organisation when implementing mental health initiatives, when we're thinking a bit bigger than some of those smaller quick wins and low-hanging fruit. So first and foremost, you need buy-in from your ELT or board. Everything starts from the top. After that investment from leadership has been secured, then a budget needs to be established to invest in mental health and wellbeing initiatives. And I really want to see all organisations having physical workplace and health and safety akin to psychological or mental health and wellbeing and safety. And it's not one or the other, but it's all encompassing. And so then once a budget has been established, then resources need to be made available in order to implement initiatives. Resources not only includes people, but it might also include some other things as well, not only money. So we would then recommend a bit of a stepped approach. So it can be really helpful to create a mental health and wellbeing working group or steering committee. They can be the change champions that can take on this project, and whether it be a 1-year, 3-year, 5-year or 10-year strategy in relation to your mental health and wellbeing and where you want to see the organisation go over time in this space. Having that working group or steering committee will ensure that there's an ongoing piece of work in this space and an ongoing drive to continue to roll out these initiatives. So once the steering committee has been established, it's very helpful to conduct an audit of your existing workplace health and wellbeing initiatives. What are you currently doing and are they working? So Looking at your EAP, are you getting data in relation to the uptake of your EAP? Are you getting all of the bells and whistles that can also come with your EAP? And are your staff happy with the service that they're getting from the EAP, as an example? Another way that you can gather some data is through employee surveys, job satisfaction. We'll talk a little bit more about that as we continue today. So then we would encourage you to implement your wellbeing strategies. And it might be useful to consider conducting a pilot program initially. Maybe there is a hotspot or a particular department or a particular area within your organisation that you might want to start with. Maybe the trends that you've received through EAP have indicated that they're more high risk in terms of stress levels or the inherent requirements of the role that they're performing. And so you can test your initiatives out with that pilot program. Then we always encourage to collect data. It's important, no point in having an initiative if you don't know if it's working for you. Is the investment worth it in the end? So very important to collect pre and post data on those key indicators. So as I mentioned earlier, it could be employee wellbeing, it could be in relation to job satisfaction, it could be around your absenteeism or complaints, grievances, LTIs, etc. And finally, once you've collected that data pre and post, after you've conducted the pilot program or conducted that initiative, adjust your interventions accordingly, and then you're ready for the next step. So how can you get feedback from your organisation and from your staff? So first of all, it's important to understand why we want to gather this data. So by gathering the data, you can understand employee preferences and priorities. So what are your staff telling you that they need? I saw a beautiful piece of work where the organisation said, you said, we did. And there's no point gathering data if you're not then doing something with it. So ensure that initiatives are relevant and effective so that you're hitting the mark in terms of what your market needs, which is your staff. Then also, this allows to foster a culture of inclusion and support within your organisation. So how to gather that feedback? So we mentioned already surveys and questionnaires. Make sure they're anonymous so that staff can be transparent and give you the feedback that you're wanting to get. And having in questions on mental health needs, preferred support services, and just their overall wellbeing. It's also helpful sometimes to consider running focus groups. So you can take a deeper dive in relation to specific issues and get a detailed understanding of your employee concerns as well. It's also helpful to have suggestion boxes, whether they be physical or digital. And you can also gather data through your everyday interactions that you have with your staff, whether they be formal one-on-ones or whether they be ad hoc, but gathering that data and utilising that. So just some considerations when designing your mental health and wellbeing initiatives, some things to consider. What is your current culture in relation to mental health and wellbeing and psychosocial safety? What is your culture in relation to having a psychologically safe workplace? What resources do you currently have available to you in terms of budget and people? And do you have any constraints, external or otherwise, that you need to consider? So when you are wanting to select an appropriate combination of mental health and wellbeing strategies, this should be based on current research available, your workplace data that you've gathered, and your consultation with your key stakeholders. And we know that successful implementation of these initiatives should be co-designed and co-collaborated and have an ongoing feedback loop in terms of that evaluation piece. It's also important to customise and be flexible with the initiatives that you're offering to your staff. First and foremost, leadership needs to be engaged to sustain and maintain the initiatives over the long term. You also need to understand your organisation's culture in this space. Are they ready for this initiative, or would it be easier to use some low-hanging fruit first to get some wins on the table, to get buy-in, to leverage off that? We would always recommend conducting that needs assessment, again, considering whether you want to do a pilot program first before you jump into something bigger. Then implementing tailored programs to the specific needs of your staff. So, for example, a tech company might benefit from stress management workshops that are focused on remote workforce challenges, Whereas a healthcare organisation might benefit from initiatives addressing burnout and emotional resilience. It's not one size fits all. You need to listen to your staff in terms of what they're needing and what they're wanting in this space. And then evaluating and adjusting the initiatives that you've implemented to ensure the long-term success. Other things to consider are customising these initiatives for your specific workplace context. For example, if you have office-based staff, you might have staff that are working in hybrid or working from home models. So the initiatives that you implement may need to have a variety of platforms, including face-to-face, online, and maybe even self-paced learning options, and also providing those in-office wellness programs to staff that are on the ground. For those industries who have a workforce that are predominantly outdoor based, then we would encourage you to meet them where they're at. Or providing catering is always helpful to bring people to come together. And it's important to talk their talk, be approachable, personable, and accessible, and be authentic and conversational. Less focus on reading materials and more focus on experiential learning or learning via doing. And then for other workforces who may have rotating rosters and high numbers of staff, then you may want to consider adapting for small group activities in their common area or lunchrooms. And visual messaging can be really helpful for this particular workforce so that they can access it when they're on the fly. So now we're going to just chat through some practical guidelines, so how to develop mental health initiatives and evaluate their effectiveness. So the basics. So in this space, it's important just to set clear and achievable goals of what you want to achieve in this space. Set up your timeline and action plan in order to meet those goals, whether it's your 1, 3, 5 or 10-year plan. Engaging with stakeholders is essential so that you can have co-design and co-implementation of your initiatives. It's also then needing to allocate those resources, both money and people. Engage key experts for consultation and delivery when that's required. Then implementing the initiative, gathering and evaluating the effectiveness. And then we're just going to give you some other key things to think about in relation to that evaluation piece. So we talked about some of this data that you can collect. So probably the only one we haven't yet mentioned is just recruitment costs. We know that that can be a significant cost for organisation, attracting and retaining and training your staff members. So that's just another key outcome data that you may want to consider with your evaluation perspective. Other data you might want to look at is engagement and attendance rates. So how many people are coming along to the training, for example? How many people have clicked on that particular topic of interest on the intranet, as an example? We'd also encourage you to collect program-specific feedback. You may also, as part of your questionnaires that are going out, to your wellbeing surveys to your staff, is to actually collect some psychological measures, whether it's quality of life or wellbeing or mental health. And then looking at staff engagement as well. And fundamentally, what is the return on investment? So it's such an important metric that I think a lot of organisations often neglect to collect. So is the initiative that you've implemented, is it working, and can it be replicated moving forwards? So our little checklist for success definitely needs leadership buy-in from the outset. Get your budget sorted, gather your relevant workplace data, learn from others' experiences, other industries similar to yours that are doing something that's working really well. No need to reinvent the wheel. Learn from that so that you can replicate that within your organisation. Discern what is the best value for your staff and your organisation. As we mentioned, try piloting and evaluate, and then consult, reflect, refine, and you're ready for the next stage. So we're just going to show you 2 little case studies before we move on to our Q&A. So I worked with the Bank of Queensland Noosa, and they had some beautiful initiatives. They had wellbeing days, and fundamentally they wanted to promote the wellbeing of their staff and wanted to place emphasis on work-life balance and ensuring that their staff were happy and enjoying coming to work. So they promoted, celebrated, and fundraised for different awareness campaigns throughout the year. They also celebrate staff birthdays as well. They had this beautiful initiative, Wellness Wednesdays, where every Wednesday staff could come to work late. They could do the thing that they wanted to do in the morning before they came. And I just thought it was such a wonderful and easy way for staff to be able to start to think about incorporating wellness into the workplace. I then attended the workplace on a monthly basis on Wellness Wednesdays to discuss a topic of interest, whether it was stress management strategies, whether it was focused on improving their sleep, whether it was looking at time management, and ultimately trying to help them to cultivate their work-life balance. And then even though I was only there going there once a month, in between, every time they had their weekly team meetings, they did that with fun activities and competition within the group to keep the morale up. As I mentioned earlier, they also fundraised for a number of different charities for meaningful causes within the community. And so how did this all come together? Well, they won some awards. It's so wonderful. So BOQ have won a number of awards for their mental health initiatives, including the People's Optimistic Award and Inclusivity Award at their half-yearly regional presentation. I'm just going to show you through one more case study, and this is Telstra. So they do have a bigger budget, but through their employee assistance programs, they were able to significantly reduce stress levels and improve their employee morale. So this led to increased utilisation rates of EAP. So that indicated a positive reception among employees regarding the importance of the service and reducing stigma in relation to reaching out for support when it's needed. Through their flexible working arrangements, policies and procedures, 83% of employees felt it improves their overall job satisfaction and work-life balance, which in turn led to lower absenteeism and higher productivity levels. With their health and wellbeing programs, staff were engaging with this, which resulted in reduced rates of obesity and improved cardiovascular health among their employees. So having healthy staff, therefore being more productive and staying in the workforce longer. They also conducted some mental health training, and 90% of participants felt more confident in recognising and addressing mental health issues. And that resulted in a more supportive work environment and a reduction in mental health related absentees. And finally, their Employee Wellbeing Hub received positive feedback for its user-friendly interface and breadth of resources available, and their usage analytics showed higher engagement rates, suggesting that employees found the hub valuable and informative. So we hope that that has been helpful for you and in your journey in creating mental health initiatives within the workplace. I'm just going to throw back to Miriam just to chat us through the next steps.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Simone. They were all great tips. I hope everyone got some great pointers out of that one. Our next webinar coming up in our monthly Healthy Minds, Thriving Workplaces series, we're going to be looking at workload and stress management. So on the 11th of September, hopefully you can join us to look at some strategies and tools for addressing workload and stress management so that you can promote employee wellbeing and productivity. Into October, we'll be looking at enhancing engagement and productivity. Definitely really valuable no matter what level of leadership you're at to help enhance that engagement and productivity levels. It's a win-win for both parties. So come and find out more about that. And then finally, with all these great efforts we're making, how do we make sure they're sustainable? So how do we create these mentally healthy workplaces where these efforts are really continuing to show results over time in our employee wellbeing, and of course, how that leads to organizational wellbeing as well. After today, we invite you to get in touch with us. We have a range of links and ways that you can do that. So please do register for the next webinar. That link will be in the email following this particular webinar today. And you can, of course, get in touch with us directly if we can help you with any of your workplace needs. We would love your feedback. Please, in the spirit of reciprocity, we would love in exchange for the information insights you've received today that you provide us with some feedback. Only take a few minutes, 5 minutes at the most, if you're getting really excited and wanting to share more specific feedback. So please feel welcome to scan this QR code now. We will also send the link to the feedback survey afterwards as well. And we really appreciate any contributions you have to help us improve what we're doing or feel really good about what we're doing. So we've got some time for Q&A now, and Simone and I are here to help with any specific questions that you have. So feel welcome to throw your questions into the chat and we will do our best to help with those. So please let us know what you would love to know more about. And just while we're waiting for those questions to come through, don't feel like you have to have the pressure of asking these great questions now. You can send us a reply to our email after this if you would like some more specific resources or some other ideas for what you could do. And of course, we're really happy to have a chat with you over the phone as well. I'm not seeing any questions pop up yet. Simone, can you see anything?
No, everyone's too shy, or they've got so many questions that I don't know where to start. But don't be shy. Hey, thank you, Joanna. Awesome. So Joanna's popped in there. Outdoor workers at my organisation are skeptical about the anonymity of EAP services. How can we bridge that divide? I think that's a fantastic question, Joanna, and a lot of organisations have the same issue. So I can attest from being from two perspectives. One, when I was a psychologist providing EAP services, literally the staff member becomes the number. Yes, some demographic data does need to be collected in terms of age, gender, those types of things, whether the issue was work related or not. But literally the staff member becomes a number. I heard someone else describe it as like a button on a shirt. So nothing significant or identifiable. Further to that, though, when I was conducting workers' compensation claim investigations and an employee specifically is saying that work had caused them stress and had accessed EAP, myself as an investigator, I was unable to get that data from the EAP provider. The employee themselves had to request that from their counsellor and then pass on to me. So it's not accessible to anybody, that information. So that's just to give a bit of context, Joanna. So what I would suggest in this space in terms of the anonymity is potentially for the leading hands, the team leaders or the supervisors to model using the service. So for them to, even if it's a practice call to EAP, could be, or even if it's for a personal matter, to call to get some support and assistance, and then to share that with their staff members. To show that, hey, fellas, I did that and it was really helpful for me. We know that when there are change champions within the organisation, that they're more peer-led activities are better than management-led activities, particularly with some staff members. Not sure if that is helpful. Miriam, anything else that you wanted to add in that space?
Thanks, Simone. Just like Joanna's just said in the chat, I agree, this is great advice. The only additional thing that all those points are definitely ones that I make, apart from the one about trying to get access to those notes. It's never something I've tried to do, so I've learned something today. I often say to groups that I am educating that as health professionals, the psychologists themselves who work for EAP, we are under extremely strict confidentiality requirements. So we are required to keep that information confidential regardless of what's going on within the organisation. So I like to say it's multiple layers of protection of privacy that is ensured. Yeah. And yeah, Denise has just got a little thought there. I will come back to your question, Mark, but let's just pause on Denise's comment here. So instead of formal EAP service, they allow their team to choose their therapist, whether they're its own current psychologist or a clinician who is an expert in that area. We don't follow up on anything other than invoices. We are a psychology practice. Nicely put. I think that's a really great way of putting it. And I think there are other organizations that I have worked with who have done exactly that. They have given the power of choice to their employees and then simply paid the invoices. So there's a lot of different ways and models about going through this.
And in that space, obviously, the organisation knows that that staff member in particular is accessing those services potentially, if that needs to be divulged. Potentially, the organisation could keep that confidential as well, to say, please don't let us know who the employee is, just give them a number, and we keep track then of how many sessions they have coming through. Where do we want to go to now, Miriam? Back to Mark?
Come back to Mark. So Mark says, what is your first best step to start this process, particularly for smaller businesses? What are your thoughts, Simone?
I'm not sure, Mark, if that's related to EAP or just in implementing mental health initiatives more broadly. Let's go with, what do you think, Miriam? EAP?
The first best step. Well, first
So if I was thinking of
Definitely have yourself a group or that committee, making sure that you have people who are champions to this space and that they're working, collaborating together. I think that EAPs or having a version of that for any small business is really invaluable, because it's that first step to making sure people get one-on-one help that they may need, no matter what's presenting for them. So I would certainly agree with that, Simone. And second to that would probably be something that is a central hub of information and resources for your staff. So whether that is links to the organizations like Beyond Blue or Men's Healthline or anything else that your team has gathered as a central point and promoting that, that would be a low cost and high impact option as well. What are your thoughts, Simone?
Yep, no, thank you, Mark. You said mental health initiatives more broadly. So I'd just start with the 5 ways to wellbeing, Mark. So maybe, I'm not sure what your industry that you work within, but just starting the conversation. So with the board or ELT, what's our plan? What's our plan to manage psychosocial hazards? Creating a strategy, getting some buy-in, and then what are we going to do? What's your low-hanging fruit? Having pardon me, maybe if you're implementing EAP as a starting point to say, hey, we know that this is important to look after our workforce, and this is an initiative that we want to implement. We're going to start it, and then we'll get some feedback about whether that's helpful for you. There was also a question from Suda. Maybe Miriam, can you read it, and then we'll.
Yeah, absolutely. You get yourself some water, Simone. So Suda says some roles require medicals to demonstrate the physical capability to do the roles. Absolutely. Some roles are high stress roles, hence, I guess, some mental resilience or mental capabilities required. Are you aware of mental health or psych tests as requirement to do those roles? It's a great question, and thank you. I have not spent a lot of time in the recruitment phase of onboarding new staff. I don't know specifically of what is being used more commonly, but I would assume that there is a certain amount of psychological testing that has to happen. Simone, do you have any comments on this further?
So there are some roles that the inherent requirements of their roles are useful. So I'm thinking first responders or people working in safety critical work. And so suitability for employers is important to look at. So I remember doing some work with the QPS and a couple of other organisations as well. And so there are psychometrics that you can use. I'd be chatting sort of with your recruitment providers about that. So specifically, I'm thinking, say, with the QPS, it would be looking at risk for developing PTSD. So is there a history of trauma and what their resilience is if they have had previous traumatic experiences? How resilient are they? Any current stress that they're currently experiencing? And then if they were to face a stress within their role as part of the inherent requirements of their role, how they're likely to cope with that. And embedding that all within your recruitment process. But I'd probably be speaking with your recruitment provider, Suda, in terms of what they're doing in that space, what psychometrics they are currently using, and then you to provide some feedback as well, if whether that's suitable for the positions that you're looking to hire.
Great, Simone. Wonderful. Look, we are out of time. Simone and I will hang around for a couple minutes after. If there are any additional questions, we're more than happy to answer those. Thank you for those who are saying thank you. And again, we just invite you to provide us feedback for today's session. We thank you all so much for joining us, and we hope to see you at our next webinar. Thanks, everybody. And thanks, Simone.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone. Have a beautiful afternoon.
Thanks, everyone.